If you've been following me on Instagram, you know that recently I've been speaking more and more about how I manage being a busy dad, a business owner, and also improve my health and fitness at the same time. Now, these are a lot of different hats that I have to wear, and if you're anything like me, that you also have to juggle yourself in your own life. And the thing is that, as someone who cares about their health and fitness, who wants to continue to improve my performance, who doesn't want to turn into a ball of fat, who lacks energy, and who, can't execute in work and in family life just because I'm starting to become unhealthy. I don't want any of that. I hope that you don't want that for yourself in your own life. And so this video is really going to be talking about one specific training protocol that I use personally right now that hopefully you can adopt and apply in your own life so that you can do the work that you need to do in order for your body to improve, get better, get stronger, improve its performance, become more resilient, and hopefully this serves you. So in the first half of the video, we're going to be talking about what the 1x20 system is, a little bit of background information on it. And in the second half of the video, I'm going to take you into my computer and I'm going to show you how I set it up. We'll talk a little bit about exercise selection. We'll talk about how to modify exercises based on the equipment that you either have or don't have access to. And I'll give you a little bit more tactical guidance in terms of how you can set this up. So what is 1x20? 1x20 is a protocol that was created by Dr. Michael Yessis. Dr. Yessis was a PhD. He was an educator at Cal State Fullerton, and he's also a well-renowned coach in the field. So a very well-respected individual, and 1x20 is essentially his brainchild. So 1x20 basically means you're doing one set of 20 repetitions of anywhere from 18 to 25 different exercises. The goal of 1x20 is to strengthen all parts of the body, all movement patterns, both compound exercises as well as isolation exercises. So you're essentially training the entire body head to toe with ideally activities or exercises that are specific to the task at hand, right? So if you're a runner, the 18 to 25 different exercises might look a little bit different than if you are a powerlifter, for example, or a football player. If you're anything like me and your focus is just on general strength development, maintaining and improvement, movement quality, and just being resilient throughout my entire body, then this program is perfect for you. So the way that we set it up is you do one workout 3 times per week. So in that workout, you have 18 to 25 different exercises, head to toe. You're doing one set of 20-ish repetitions, and we'll talk about why the ish, of a weight that is as heavy as possible, that you can also maintain good technique for all 20 repetitions. In the second half of this video, we're going to be talking about how to make those decisions in terms of, well, do I stop now? Do I add weight next time? Do I keep it the same next time and just try and add more repetitions? Talk about how to execute the program in the second half of the video. So now that you know a little bit more about the program in general, why do we like it? The first reason why I like the 1x20 protocol is because you develop really good movement quality, right? If you're doing 20 repetitions of, say, a squat Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, that's 60 reps throughout the week. And because the focus is on movement quality and on trying to get a 20 rep max, which is far, far, far away from a 1 rep max, you're generally going to find that you're not going to compensate quite as much as if your focus was on intensity as opposed to accumulating a high volume of reps. So that's the first reason. The second reason is because, actually counterintuitive, you would think that if I'm only doing one set of 20 reps, I'm not really going to get stronger, but quite the opposite is actually the case. There's a lot of high-level coaches who have implemented this system within their own teams and athletes, and I've also implemented it as well with youth athletes, with adults, with high-level pros, like kind of the whole gamut, just people who have never done it before, and the results kind of speak for themselves. You get a insane improvement in strength. You'll get a good hypertrophic or muscle building response because you are training kind of the whole spectrum. You're training muscle endurance in the first 1 to 15 repetitions, and then you get a max strength stimulus towards the end when, if you've ever done 20 rep squats, that shit is pretty tough. So you really get the max strength development towards the end, and then more of a muscular endurance stimulus, and then you get to train the movement pattern really nicely by doing 20 repetitions. In addition to the improvement in movement quality and the strength building effects of the program. Because you're only doing one set of all these different exercises, you get to pick exercises that you otherwise wouldn't normally be able to do, right? If you're doing 3 to 5 sets of bench press, 2 sets of RDLs, maybe a set of squats, like you don't really get to work your hip abductors or your adductors or your hip flexors or your soleus or your rear delts and your front delts and your side delts. Like there's a lot of isolation type movements that you can do on the 1x20 system that you otherwise wouldn't be able to fit in to your training schedule unless you want to just stay at the gym for hours on end. So by only doing one set of each exercise, you get to add in a lot more movements, and that will then feed into you essentially leaving no stone unturned when it comes to developing strength and movement coordination and resilience in your body. So another benefit of doing 20 repetitions is you get to increase the amount of blood flow in a joint that you're working, right? So not only are you stimulating the muscle tissue, but you're also getting blood flow to ligaments and tendons and connective tissue. That is super helpful if you're trying to use your body for athletic type movements, right? So if you're combining 1x20 with a speed or a plyometric program, it kind of fits really nicely in that it's not so intense that you're just done when you're trying to sprint and jump and all that kind of stuff. But then B, because you are strengthening the connective tissue, the tendons, the ligaments, that plays really nicely with jump training, with sprint development and all that kind of stuff. So now for the second half of the video, I'm going to take you into my computer and I'm going to show you exactly how you can set this up for yourself. Welcome to the second half of the 1x20 video, where I'm going to be sharing with you how to set up the 1x20 program for yourself based on the equipment that you have access to, and all that kind of, and what your goals are, what you're trying to use this program for specifically. Like for me, I'm trying to run faster and jump higher. So the exercises that I might choose would be different than if you are a rock climber, for example. So we're looking at how to set up our program as well as how to execute it. So the beauty of 1x20, at least in my opinion, as a user of it, right, as opposed to a coach, like, yes, this works. Actually, as a person who uses this in real time, the thing that I love about it is that it's very self-progressing. So I know exactly what my focus is for each of the exercises on a given day, right? So we'll talk about this and how to execute the program. But I know that if I'm going to use the same amount of weight, I'm trying to hit 1 to 2 to 5, whatever, more repetitions, or based on my previous session's performance, I know that today I'm going to increase my weight, which is cool because that's like a new PR. And then I'm going to try and rep out as many high quality reps as possible with that weight. So we'll talk about that in the second half of this video. So as a review, let's just talk about a couple things that we discussed in the first half of the video. The 1x20 system is essentially one set of 20-ish repetitions per exercise per session. We're doing the same session 3 times per week with ideally 24 hours of rest in between each session. And in terms of exercise selection, you're trying to select anywhere from 18 to 25 different exercises per session. And again, you're keeping those the same until you stop gaining progress with whatever set of exercises that you've selected. So in terms of exercise selection, remember that we're trying to include compound as well as isolation exercises. And ideally, if we're doing this, so that maybe the first time you're setting this up and you're doing this for yourself, you don't have to worry about this quite as much. But ideally, in order to set it up the most effectively for transfer of training, we want to include exercises that are task specific. So the example that I gave in the first half of the video was if you're training to become a runner versus if you're training to be a football player versus if you're training to just be a generally strong and fit dad, like the exercises that you select might look a little bit different. And obviously, exercise selection also has to keep in mind the equipment that you either do or don't have access to. So that might look different depending on the person. One note on equipment: if you don't have much equipment, this is going to be you're just limited in general. But for the sake of how you're limited with the 1x20 program, if let's say you're doing push-ups as your horizontal push movement, because there's nothing to overload, it's going to be difficult for you to continue to see progress, which is probably why if you've been doing home workouts and they've only been with body weight or very light equipment, you probably haven't been seeing really great results. It's also very kind of boring, right? Like, I think most people, I could argue, would they just want to feel strong, and it's very difficult to continue to feel strong if all you have in terms of load is your body weight. So that's a quick note. You will be limited. You do need equipment. Like, I think a lot of people just need to accept that and either get more equipment for home or get a gym. After we talk about how to put this together, oh yes, we're going to talk about repetitions. This is the art of how to execute this correctly. And always know that regardless of what exercise you're doing or what rep range you're trying to go for, movement quality is going to be the thing that either determines whether or not a weight is acceptable for you or appropriate for you, and then B, whether or not your reps count. So 20 shitty reps does not mean 20 good reps, right? So we're trying to get as many high quality reps as possible. And once form starts to break down or technique starts to give way, then we want to cut the set, write down that number of repetitions, and then we'll try and beat it the next time. So first, we're going to talk about exercise selection. If you've downloaded my how to modify, I forget what it's called, the exercise modification document that's on my Instagram, you can find it in the link tree, which is in my bio. Download that because it's going to walk you through the 4 major movement patterns in our body. And so having that knowledge as a background will serve you very well when trying to set up 1x20 for yourself. So we have, I'm basically listing off different movement patterns to make up the 18 to 25 different exercises, as well as keep in mind that we're doing compound lifts, which are kind of our main patterns, as well as isolation lifts, right? So rear delts is not really a movement pattern. It's more of just a region in our body that we may or may not want to train depending on what our goals are. So just to kind of walk you through all the different types of exercises that you can then select whatever exercise you want based on personal preference or equipment access, whatever the case might be. So first we have knee dominant. So these are your squats. Then we have horizontal push or bench press. We have bench press push-ups. We have hip dominant. So these are all your hinging type movements, your RDLs, your deadlifts, your single leg deadlifts, doesn't really matter. We have our vertical pulls. So think pull-ups, lat pull downs, stuff like that. Any kind of quad, like a seated quad isolation exercise. You could probably put sissy squats in here as well. However, I always tend to, if I can, I'm going to choose an exercise that adds external load because it makes it easier when you're trying to progress the program. Sorry for the baby noises. That's my life, if you hear it. Then we have horizontal pulls. So these are all our rowing type movements. We have hamstring isolation. Again, I like a prone hamstring curl. You could do a seated hamstring curl. Would not go with Nordics because good luck doing 20 straight reps of Nordics. You're going to die. Vertical push are all our shoulder press movements. Landmine shoulder press, dumbbell shoulder press, doesn't matter. Calves with the knee straight trains the gastroc. And calves with the knee bent trains the soleus. So we want to make sure that we're including both. We got biceps, literally any kind, hip abductors, so our glutes, triceps, hip adductors, our groin, lateral delts, rear delts, hip flexors. And I break up core exercises into core exercises in the sagittal plane. So think like a plank. I break them, and then we can distinguish sagittal plane core exercises with frontal plane core exercises. So think like loaded carries or like a side plank type of maneuver. We also have transverse plane core exercises, which are like your Pallof presses or your resisted chops, anything like that. And then I made a little bit of space for any kind of specialized exercise. So let's say you're a basketball player and you have a history of ankle sprains. It might be nice to add in some ankle circles. And if you don't know what those are, I hope I have them on my YouTube channel. I might have them on the old Dr. Dunk's channel, so check out both. But this is a really great exercise for individuals who have either weak ankles or who have a history of ankle sprains with either limited range of motion, difficulty with balance, or both. Another kind of special exercise that you may want to include in your specific version of 1x20 are shoulder external and internal rotation strengthening exercises with a dumbbell, as an example, or hangs. And if you're very keen on different types of exercises, you might realize that some things can't really be progressed, right? If I'm doing ankle circles and I do 20 reps each direction, like I don't know if it would really serve you to then do that with more and more weight, maybe. But the point is that uh, personally, the way I do it, and I don't know if this is textbook from Dr. Yesus, but the way I like to do it is sometimes I'll switch and rotate different exercises into these special exercise categories so that I'm hitting things every now and then, almost like minimum effective dose to, you know, loaded ankle range of motion or minimum effective dose to rear delt strengthening, for example. Kind of just depends. This is kind of where to a certain degree, there's a science of training, but there's also an art involved in coaching and training. So take that with a grain of salt. So I'm just going to walk through and give 2 examples for each. This will be fast, but just to give you some options in terms of different kinds of exercises based on, what physical abilities that you can do. So for example, someone might do let's not do that. Someone might do a barbell squat. Jesus. But then if you have knee pain, you might not be able to move through full range of motion. And so an alternative might be let's say, goblet squat with back on the wall. So in that, you're not allowing your shins to travel really far forward over your knees. And so yes, you're moving through a reduced range of motion, but the point is that we want something that is able to be loaded. So you can hold a kettlebell or a dumbbell out in front of you. So we can progress either reps or weight with that. But we're also being respectful of where your body is and the positions that it maybe can't access right now. We can always substitute this out, right? Like these exercises are not set in stone. And what you'll find as you progress through this program is that, there will be a certain point in time where, say, you're doing barbell squats, it's going to get harder and harder to continue to make progress. Rather than changing the rep range, what Dr. Yesus would suggest is that you instead change the exercise. So you give your body a new stimulus, and then you kind of figure out whatever the amount of weight that correlates to your current 20 rep max. And then you're going through this process of trying to beat it. And we'll talk about that again in the reps section. Horizontal push. This is bench press or dumbbell bench or push up. Doesn't matter. Hip dominant. That is your barbell hip hinge. That's my young nephew. His name is Isaiah. He's like a month and a half, I believe. So nice to meet you, world. Or deadlift or single leg deadlift. Vertical pull, pull up, or lat pull down. One note on pull-ups. Good luck trying to do, some people can. If you can do 20 straight pull-ups, then do pull-ups. However, most people probably need some band assistance if they're going to try and knock out 20 straight pull-ups. I will tend to go, so again, in terms of scalability and intensification over time, it's going to be very difficult to continue to make progress with 1x20 if you're doing loaded pull-ups, unless you're strong as fuck already. A better alternative is lat pull downs. So just keep in mind that the exercise that you do select, you want to try and think like, okay, can this be progressed with repetitions and or weight or is this like a more advanced version of something else that I can start with, right? So a pull-up is harder than a lat pull down in terms of intensity. So it might be better to start with the lat pull down, max out the stack, and then work towards being able to do pull-ups. Quads, seated quad extension, or like assisted squat. But again, body weight exercises are less preferred. Horizontal pull, let's go one arm dumbbell row or a seated 2-hand row. Like the one I really like for this is from a bilateral double arm standpoint is the chest supported row. Seated preferred over the one where you're bent over the little machine with your chest digging down and you can't breathe. I like prone hamstring curl more so than seated, but either works. Vertical push landmine shoulder press, or seated dumbbell press. Big fan of, so basically any kind of standing calf raise. I'm a big fan of the Smith machine for a lot of reasons, but it's just super easy and it's stable. And I always prefer a Smith machine or a standing calf machine over holding one dumbbell and trying to. I just don't feel it being loaded as well through my calf. Smith. Seated bicep or back to wall. I like the back to wall bicep curl because your humerus is fixed. I feel like a lot of people, when they do bicep curls, they end up moving their shoulder joint a lot, and that's how people tend to aggravate this bicep tendon. So a back to wall bicep curl is when you're literally, my back is against the wall, and then I extend my humerus so that my elbow is fixed, so that it's all just elbow flexion and extension. So if you have any kind of like anterior shoulder pain, I would try that back to wall bicep curl. Hip abductors, this could be a side plank with top leg lift or cable if you want. There's better hip abduction exercises, but these are the simple ones. Tricep hook lying for the long head, and then standing cable tricep press down. Everything else, hip adductors, side plank, bottom leg lift. These two are super hard. Well, this one's not as hard, but this one's super hard. So you should try that. I'm big into PRI, Postural Restoration Institute. So I like adductor pullbacks here. You don't need a lot of, if you're in the right position, if you're actually in a hip shift position, and I'll talk about this on future videos, if you're actually in a hip shift position on an adduct or on any exercise, you're going to feel a shitload of adductors, and you really don't need to be overloading that too crazy. Most likely they're very weak. Lateral delt, okay, you get the point, right? I don't want to spend too long on this. I will say here, just so that you can see it, plank, loaded carry, loaded one arm carry. The reason for that is because if you have something heavy in this arm and your natural tendency is to drop the shoulder, you need this side abs to hold you in the frontal plane. So super good. Palloff presses or chops. Okay, let's talk about reps because this video is getting long. Now that you have your exercises set up, your goal again is to get 20-ish reps. So I talked about this in the previous video, and I made a disclaimer that we're going to talk about it in this video. So that's what we're about to do. If you say, let's think about an exercise, let's think barbell bench press, right? If your goal is to hit 135 and you're like, I've never done this before, or yeah, let's say you're at a new weight and you go for 15 and your form starts to break down, or you start to, your muscles start to get tired, you cut it at 15. And then since our goal is to get to 20 total repetitions, we want to use the same weight the next session and then just try and hit as many more reps as we can. If you choose a really, really heavy weight and you can only hit like 12 to 14, like you need to drop the weight. So our goal is to get around 20. And I would actually prefer if you stay on the lighter side, so you're a little bit more conservative with the weights that you select, because then you're probably going to improve your movement quality. We're working at a lower intensity, so it gives us space to then progress in future sessions, and your likelihood of injury is going to be less. So I always, especially in the beginning, when you're new to the system, you've never done it before, it's much better to err on the side of caution when it comes to weight, and then just push for more repetitions. So again, 1 by 20-ish. If you can hit more than 20, then let's say you can hit 2 extra reps and it was relatively easy. This chart will give you a recommendation for you to do based on the type of exercise. So you don't have to do this verbatim, but the point is that if it's a lower body compound movement, you could probably add more weight than a upper body compound movement. If it's a lower body isolation movement, say a calf raise or hip abduction, then you still could probably increase more weight than you would for a uh, upper body isolation movement. But you would want, for the isolation movements, you always want to go smaller increments. So anywhere from 2.5 pounds on each side up to maybe 5 for isolation movements, and then anywhere from 5 to 10, and if it's really easy, 15 total pounds on both sides for your compound lower body movements specifically. So I hope hopefully that made sense. Um, and as you're going through this program, our goal is to make small incremental changes every single session. Focuses on small incremental changes. Uh, don't try and add 10 pounds on each side for all of your lower body movements every single session. This is counterintuitive. I've even fallen victim to doing this. I don't know if victim is the right word, but I've even done this myself during my sessions because my ego gets in the way. And then I get stuck at a certain weight as opposed to adding 5 pounds on each side or even 2.5 pounds on each side, uh, doing really, really high quality repetitions, staying kind of in the 20 to 23 rep range. So again, prioritizing volume accumulation as opposed to intensification. I find better results that way. So I would recommend that you do the same. Trying to think if I have any other things. Oh, after you continue to make progress in either the number of repetitions that you perform with the same amount of weight with really good technique, or by increasing slowly the amount of load that you use for each exercise, you want to just continue this process until you start to stop seeing progress with your numbers and your weights. And then at that point, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, Dr. Yessis would recommend that you switch the exercise as opposed to change the loading parameters. So maybe in another video in the future, we'll talk about what to do after 1x20, because he would recommend that you follow the same kind of thought process and protocol, except for instead of 1x20, you go 1x14, and then later even into 1x8, and then more into after that, kind of working what we call velocity-based training. So more strength and power development, because at that point, once you're in the eights, like you're going to be pushing some serious weight on all of your movements. And the only way that you could do that effectively and get to that point is if you spend the prerequisite time in the 20s and the 14s. So don't rush to try and do that too fast, too soon. Stay here in the 20s, really maximize what you can get out of this. And yeah, I hope that helps. Again, pick exercises that are appropriate for your body and for your task or whatever goal you're trying to accomplish. That's primary thing number one. And then aside from that, then it's just about getting a feel for the program and learning how to navigate the process of progressing repetitions and, more importantly, progressing load.